Hello. We are, as a species, as people, souls, whatever you want to say, we are fantastic storytellers. Really, like every day we wake up and we're like, all right, story continues. Today I have work. What is work? Well, work is all of the experiences I've had at work in the past. Therefore, it will be that way today. So let me base my emotions off of that and my expectations off of that. And therefore, when I go through my day, my perceptions will most likely align with that because that's what I'm looking for. That continued story. I propose to you the idea of changing what kind of narrative you're telling yourself. If you go through the day looking for something you prefer more, which typically just ends up being something you can appreciate, even if it's not something you super enjoy, something you can appreciate anyway, your life will be much better. Um, just to drive home the point of you can perceive, well, I'll say this, you can perceive the same situation in multiple ways. The situation itself is, there is no, I don't want to say there is no objective truth because it's kind of hard to wrap your mind around that concept if you haven't already been engaging with that. But any given scenario, experience, instance of something happening in your life, first, we immediately attach a whole bunch of assumptions to it so that we can tell ourselves a story about it because that's what we do. Second, I don't know what the second thing was. But anyway, one situation has many totally different perceptions and ways that you can perceive it and experience it. You're literally experiencing whatever situation you're going through. You're experiencing it, the emotions it makes you feel, because of the assumptions you have, the story you've told about that situation that you've told yourself, and how you should react, like what you've told yourself you should react as. But that situation doesn't actually have any inherent meaning. It's all meaningless until we give it meaning. And that's the beauty of being natural storytellers, of us having the natural tendency to look for a connection here in the past, here in the present, and then here in the future. For example, this is a super silly example, but this is a real example from my life. I have two of them. The first one I've talked about on this channel before, but the first one is what I'm going to start with. I wake up, I hear birds singing, and I feel great. I'm excited. I'm like, my day has just started with birds singing, and like, that's the stuff that happens in movies, right? It's a very positive experience. However, my mother wakes up to the same experience. Does not enjoy that. She's not a big fan of birds. Totally fine. That's fine. She's got reasons for that. But so when she wakes up and hears the bird, she goes, "Oh, well, that's annoying. I wish I could sleep more. Or I wouldn't have been woken up by these birds, by this thing that I don't really like." The same thing happened in both scenarios. We both experienced the same thing. But we had two totally different perceptions of it, and we had two different emotional feelings as the situation was going through. And that set up the rest of our days to be totally different. So and then on to the more silly example, which is I'm driving to work. I see, in a split moment, I see a caterpillar like wriggling its way across the road. I value all life in whatever form it comes, and for me personally, I try my best to avoid trampling on things. So I'm in my car, I'm driving, I see this thing going across the road. So I do a little swerve. I think I'm a little late. Even though it's so small, it would only really take like a minute action to like avoid it. I'm like, it's too late. I already ran this thing over. That's what I think, because I don't see it in my rear view. A few days later, I'm driving back from work, and I'm on the same road, and I see a caterpillar. And this time, it's on the other side of the road, so I don't have to worry about running it over. And it's like, wriggling its way across. Looks exactly the same. Looks exactly the same. Now it's a caterpillar, so can't really tell if it's the same one. But there are two options here. The reality is, I don't know, is there a truth here? Is there a truth that this is the same caterpillar? Or is there a truth that it's totally different? Obviously, it's totally different and whatever. Like, it doesn't matter. There's no way it could be the same thing. But the thing is it doesn't matter. Whatever way I choose to perceive it, is this the same caterpillar? Oh, wow, I feel nice. The idea that I didn't murder this caterpillar by accident. Murder was maybe a heavy word for a caterpillar in many people's opinions, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter which one would be objectively true, if there is an objective truth, because there was an experience. I had that experience that this could be the same one. So it sent me down this line of thinking of like, oh man, that feels nice. Maybe I didn't kill that one. Maybe this is the same one. And then I left it at that. Didn't have to be. I didn't have to know the truth about it. I just surrendered to the idea of it could be the same one. It could be a different one. Honestly, it feels better for me to think that it would be the same one, so I feel like I didn't run that other one over. And I haven't thought about it since. But the experience itself was there was two totally different experiences I could have had there. I could have had the experience of the one that I chose. The experience I chose was to be okay with it being either one and feeling better about it and then dismissing it from my memory. Or two, having this moment where I'm like, oh, but the objective reality says this. Says that it is unlikely that that would be the same caterpillar. So how foolish am I to even consider that? Both of those perceptions exist, but I didn't choose the second one. I didn't even consider the second one because I know the way that I like to think. Okay? What feels good for me to think. I think that's something people lose track of, is that our thoughts have positive and negative energy. It feels good to think a certain way, and it feels bad to think another way. An example, some people feel good complaining. That's fine. But to me, like, as I've lost my ability to articulate about this, it might be clear that to me, that's not something I really enjoy. To complain about things, is it easy? Absolutely. Is it feasible, possible to do at almost any point in your life? Absolutely. But it feels bad. It doesn't feel good to complain. Some people feel good to complain because it's like a short-term, in my opinion, in my perception, it's a short-term release of like, oh, here's the situation. At least I can have a response to it. Even if it's negative, here's me having a sense of power to complain about it. And people aren't actively thinking that. It's just natural. But you got to realize that that's like a habit you'll build, and you'll continue to have this negative experience because that's what you've done before, because we're incredible storytellers, and all we do is continue the same story until you get to the point where you just realize, I can change the story. So use your ability as a storyteller. We're doing it all the time. We are doing it all the time. We do not stop. We retain information better if it's in a story. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy? Like, think about like that memorization technique, like where you're walking through a house and you have all the different rooms, and each room is super different from the last one, but it contains one piece of information that you need to carry. So instead of you just having to memorize 7 different ideas, now you have a house that you're walking through, and it's 7 different ideas, but you can remember it because you're telling yourself a progressing story. It goes from one thing to the next. Instead of, all right, do I have the capacity to just remember 7 different items? You may, but it's a very different experience than, can I recall a story that contains the right information? And also, all of history is a story, and we can't stop telling ourselves stories, and we can't stop telling each other stories. That's what projecting is. Like, our conversations are literally projecting our own perceptions, our own stories about our lives to other people. So yes, we're storytellers. You're a storyteller. I'm a storyteller. The news is a storyteller. But I mean, like, do you want to listen to someone else's story, or do you want to ask yourself, like, what story do I want to tell myself? Do I want to experience? The answer you're going to come to is that you want the story that you prefer. And who knows what you prefer better than yourself. So, and then from there, it's kind of about, like, streamlining what kind of thinking you prefer to do or not. So, you're a storyteller. All right? Change your story. I love you. Take care.